Hi everyone, today we're going to be dissecting a turtle. This turtle is from the phylum Chordata, subphylum Vertebrata, and it's in the class of Reptilia. General characteristics of reptiles is that they're independent of water, meaning they don't necessarily require water. They have thick, tough, dry skin, and they have limbs which help them typically push upright from the ground, and they have amniotic eggs.
So the general body plan of the turtle is the head, the neck, the shell or the trunk, and the tail. So here's the shell, and you'll notice on the dorsal side of the turtle, it's got lots of counter shading, which is helpful in camouflage. It's an adaptation to life on land because they hide in plants usually. It also protects from predators, and it's made of dermal bone and keratin.
Okay, so with turtles, because it's a reptile, an important feature and adaptation for a turtle is that since they're terrestrial, they have to have very thick and tough skin. They do have, if you look very closely, you can see that it's a very scaly skin, and what that does is it allows for, it prevents against dehydration for when the animal's on land, which is very, very critical for animals that are living on land. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and point out some of the nervous system, or critical parts of the nervous system. I'm going to point out the sensory organs. So right here you see the two eyes. Typically reptiles do have subpar vision. If you look over here where about this little circle is, that is the tympanium, and that's going to go ahead and detect wavelengths for hearing, detecting. And also reptiles do have inner ears, which is critical for balance. And for turtles, that specifically facilitates their lifestyle because a lot of times turtles are basking on the sun on, maybe like a rock, so they need to be able to coordinate the balance for that. And if we go down further, over here we have the two little nose. Something that's really interesting about turtles is they have very large olfactory lobes, which means they have very good keen senses of smell. And for the touch, again, we do have the skin, which also facilitates its ability to sense in its environment. Alright, so an overview for the brain, for the turtle brain. Here we have an elongated olfactory lobe, which connects all the way to the nose and facilitates a really keen sense of smelling. And we have the knobs right here, which are the pituitary glands, which facilitate hormone distribution throughout the turtle. And down here we have the brain stem, which is the medulla and also is a connection or the tail end of the brainstem. And underneath we have the cerebellum, which, as we mentioned before, this is very important for the turtle because its life requires that it balances. And this is also something that helps with depth perception. So if a turtle was maybe swimming or coming onto shore to lay its eggs, it can use its depth perception to help facilitate that activity. So these two lobes are the optic lobes, and this facilitates seeing. And what's typically seen in reptiles is that their vision is typically subpar.
So here we're doing the respiratory system. The air is going to come down the trachea into the lung down here, and the lung is actually an adaptation that allows this turtle to live on land. And since their metabolic rate is so low because they're ectothermic, they actually have much simpler lungs than an endothermic animal like a bird or a mammal. And the rib cage is attached to the shell, so it can't expand. So what happens is when he moves the muscles of his legs, it creates space in there for the lung to expand and deflate. So in the circulatory system we have the heart. It is a 3-chambered heart. It consists of a left atria, a right atria, and one ventricle. And the ventricle is partially divided by an internal septum. Here we have a more detailed model of the heart. You can see the left atria, the right atria, and the ventricle. And if we open it, we can see the inside. And what's unique about this is they have a partial septum, which actually makes the heart much more efficient because it prevents a lot of mixing of the oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood. And also, what happens is you can see the 3 arteries coming from the heart. What's interesting is when the turtle dives, the water pressure will close off this valve to the pulmonary circuit, and this valve will then open, which allows it to recirculate through the blood to the body. That way it's kind of recycling the oxygen in the blood without having to go through the lungs. Moving on to the digestive system, the turtle is an omnivore. He eats things like plants, insects, worms, things like that. He eats through the mouth. It comes down the esophagus into the stomach, which is found under here. And in the stomach, gastric juices break down the food with muscular contractions from the stomach. From the stomach, it passes into the small intestine, and in the small intestine it receives bile from the liver and pancreatic enzymes from the pancreas, which you can kind of see under here. Both those aid in digestion. Here's the gallbladder, which is where it stores bile produced from the liver, and then at the very bottom is the cloaca. You can kind of see an opening here. This is the cloaca actually serves a different role for different systems in the turtle, but for the digestive system, it receives waste from the kidneys and transfers them out of the body. Okay, so another interesting thing about the turtle is they have these little yellow round fat bodies. They're dispersed throughout the entire body, and they serve as energy reserves. Okay, go.
All right, moving along, we're going to do the excretory system, and in the excretory system, we're going to do an overview of the kidneys, the bladder, and the cloaca. So first of all, we have the kidneys, which we see is located behind the bladder right here. So these are the kidneys. And the kidneys serve as a function, or they function to secrete uric acid, which is typically white and thick. And this is a particular adaptation that's vital to turtles because it helps them conserve water. And moving along, we're going to go ahead and go to the bladder. The bladder serves as a reservoir to hold waste. And from the waste, we travel all the way down to the cloaca. So we did locate the cloaca, and the cloaca serves as an opening, and it receives the waste from the kidneys and fluids and transfers it into the environment. Okay, so here's the cloaca, and this facilitates copulation. And what's really interesting with our turtle is we know it's a female, first off, because there's a lot of eggs. She's oviporous, meaning that she's carrying her eggs right now, and the eggs are actually in different stages of development. That's why we have some that are bigger and some that are smaller. And of course, after or when she's ready to lay the eggs, they go through the canal and into through the cloaca.